In this episode, we take the pressure off by turning a vague goal like study for SecurityX into something you can actually carry in your head and execute day after day without burning out. Most beginners don't fail because they are incapable of learning security, but because their plan is either too complicated to maintain or too fuzzy to measure. A spoken study plan means you can say it out loud in simple language, almost like giving yourself instructions, and that makes it easier to follow when life gets busy. We are also going to build exam day mental models, which are just reliable ways of thinking that keep you steady when questions feel tricky or when time starts to feel tight. The aim is not to become a different person overnight, but to set up a system that keeps you moving forward even on low-energy days. If you finish listening with a plan you can describe in under a minute and a handful of mental models you can replay under stress, you will be studying smarter without needing more hours. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A good study plan starts by admitting something that feels uncomfortable but is incredibly freeing. Motivation is unreliable, and your plan has to work even when you are not feeling it. Beginners often design a plan for their best day when they have time, focus, and confidence, but most real days are not best days. So the first mental move is to design for consistency rather than intensity, because consistent exposure beats heroic cramming. Think of learning like building a path by walking it. You don't need to sprint. You need to show up often enough that your brain starts expecting the material. That also means your plan should have a minimum version that fits into a tight schedule and an expanded version for days when you can do more. If your plan only works when the calendar is perfect, it's not a plan, it's a wish. The goal is a routine you can keep even when you are tired, distracted, or annoyed, because those are the conditions where most study plans quietly die. Now let's define what a spoken study plan sounds like, because the word spoken is doing real work here. A spoken plan is short, clear, and built from actions you can actually perform without negotiating with yourself for 10 minutes first. It might sound like, I study 4 days a week for 30 minutes, and on weekends I do one longer review, and every session ends with 5 questions and a 2-minute recap. That kind of plan is not fancy, but it is usable, and usability is the secret ingredient. The spoken part matters because if you can't say your plan simply, you probably can't execute it simply. Complex schedules with too many moving parts create guilt when you miss one piece, and guilt is a terrible teacher because it makes you avoid the material. A clear plan creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence, which is what you want long before exam day. When you practice saying your plan out loud, you also practice believing it, and that belief makes the plan feel like a normal part of life instead of a temporary punishment. A beginner-friendly plan also needs a map of what you are trying to build in your mind, not just a calendar of hours. Security exams reward understanding, not just recognition, so your plan should rotate through 3 kinds of learning: first exposure, reinforcement, and retrieval practice. First exposure is when you meet a topic and learn what it means in plain language. Reinforcement is when you come back to it later and add details, connect it to other ideas, and correct misunderstandings. Retrieval practice is when you try to pull the idea out of your memory without looking, usually by answering questions or explaining it in your own words. The spoken plan should include all 3, because people often do only the first one and mistake familiarity for mastery. If you only read and reread, the material can feel comfortable, but comfort is not the same as being able to answer under time pressure. Retrieval practice feels harder, but it is the part that prepares you for the exam, because the exam is literally a retrieval event. You are training your brain to perform on demand, not just to nod along. One of the most useful mental models for studying security is what I call the ladder model, where you climb from words to meaning to decisions. At the bottom rung, you learn the term, like what authentication is or what encryption is. The next rung is meaning, which is being able to explain it without buzzwords and without relying on memorized sentences. The top rung is decision-making, which is being able to choose when and why you would use it and what problem it solves. SecurityX questions often live on that top rung because they ask for best, first, most effective, or most appropriate, and those words are really asking for a decision. Your study plan should intentionally climb the ladder, not camp at the bottom. When you learn a new idea, you can test yourself by asking 3 simple prompts. What is it? Why does it matter? And when would I choose it over something else? If you can answer those out loud in plain language, you are moving toward exam readiness instead of just collecting definitions. Another mental model that makes studying more efficient is the bucket model for organizing security concepts. Beginners get overwhelmed because security feels like a huge pile of disconnected topics, but most ideas fit into a small set of buckets. Protect, detect, respond, and recover is one of the simplest bucket sets that still has power. When you learn a control, ask which bucket it primarily serves, because that helps you predict how questions will be written. Firewalls, access controls, and hardening mostly live in protect, even though some also help detect. Logging, monitoring, and alerting live in detect. Incident handling steps, containment, and communication live in respond. Backups, restoration, and continuity live in recover. Your brain likes categories because categories reduce the number of things you have to remember as separate facts. Instead of memorizing every tool and term as unique, you memorize the bucket logic and then attach terms to the logic. On exam day, this helps you avoid mismatched answers, like picking a detect option when the question is clearly asking for prevention. To make the plan practical, you also need a rhythm that matches how memory actually works. Short sessions spread across the week generally build stronger long-term memory than one big session, because your brain has time to consolidate what you learned between sessions. Consolidation is the quiet process where your brain takes new information and files it into long-term storage, and it happens best with sleep and spacing. So a realistic plan might include a brief weekday routine and a longer weekend review, but the real key is the spacing, not the hero session. A helpful approach is to always begin a session by recalling what you did last time, even if it is only for 2 minutes, because that forces retrieval and strengthens the memory trace. Then you learn something new, and then you end by retrieving again, like explaining the main idea without notes. This beginning and ending retrieval acts like bookends, and it turns a simple study session into a memory-building session. You are training yourself to remember, not just to read. A spoken plan also needs a way to handle weak areas without making you miserable. Beginners often either avoid weak topics because they feel discouraging or they obsess over them and burn out. A balanced mental model is what I call the 2-pass rule. In the first pass, you aim for broad coverage so nothing is completely unfamiliar, and in the second pass, you deepen the areas that cost you points. Broad coverage matters because exams can pull from many corners, and being a little competent across the board is better than being perfect in one area and lost in another. The second pass is where you earn extra points by turning weak spots into decent spots, not necessarily into perfect spots. This is important because perfectionism steals time from other topics that could be improved more easily. Your plan should include a regular check-in moment, maybe once a week, where you decide which topics are improving and which still feel foggy. Then you adjust next week's focus instead of guessing. This makes your plan feel like steering a car, not like being dragged behind it. Now we shift toward exam day mental models, because the day of the test is its own environment with its own psychology. One mental model that helps is the process over feelings model, where you commit to a consistent decision process regardless of how you feel about a question. If you read a question and feel panic, that feeling does not mean you are failing. It means the question is doing its job by creating pressure. Your response should be to slow down just enough to apply the process. Identify what is being asked, extract the relevant facts, eliminate mismatched answers, and choose the best remaining option. This process is like a stabilizer, and stabilizers are useful precisely when the water is rough. Another mental model is the single question bubble, where you treat the question in front of you as the only question that exists. You do not use a hard question as evidence that the whole exam is going poorly, and you do not use an easy question as evidence that you should rush. You stay in the bubble, execute the process, and move on. That is how you prevent one moment from contaminating the rest of your performance. Time management on exam day also benefits from a mental model that treats time like a budget rather than a countdown. A countdown makes you anxious because it feels like something is being taken from you. A budget feels like something you are allocating with intention. You decide, before you begin, that you will not donate unlimited minutes to any single question. If you encounter a question that is taking too long, you make a decision, mark it if review is available, and move forward. This is not giving up, it is protecting future points. When performance-based items appear, like performance-based question, PBQ, items, the same budget mindset applies, but with an extra layer of method. You scan the task, identify what kind of thinking it requires, and you harvest the easy points first inside the task before you chase the harder parts. Many candidates waste time trying to make a PBQ perfect from the start, but perfection is not the goal. Collecting points efficiently is the goal. The budget mindset keeps you from turning one complex item into a time sink that steals from simpler questions later. Another exam day mental model that saves a surprising number of points is the verb model, where you pay attention to what the question is asking you to do. Some questions are asking you to prevent, some to detect, some to respond, and some to recover, and the correct answers often live in different families depending on that verb. If the question is about stopping something from happening again, you are probably looking for a control that blocks or reduces likelihood. If the question is about confirming what happened, you are probably looking for evidence, logging, monitoring, or validation steps. If the question is about immediate actions during an incident, you are usually thinking containment and communication before deep analysis, because stopping damage comes first. If the question is about returning to normal operations, you might be in restoration and hardening after you have stability. This model works because it aligns your thinking with the exam's intent, and it helps you eliminate tempting distractors that are good ideas but wrong for the moment. When you practice studying, you can train this by always asking, what is the verb of this situation, and what family of actions fits that verb? On exam day, that habit becomes automatic and fast. There is also a mindset model that helps you handle uncertainty, because you will not feel 100% sure on every question, and that is normal. The evidence-based choice model says you choose the option that best fits the facts provided, not the story you invent. When you are unsure, your brain tries to fill gaps with assumptions, but exams do not reward assumptions, they reward reading. If the scenario does not mention a specific constraint, do not build a strategy that depends on that constraint being true. Instead, choose the option that is most generally correct given the stated situation, and that most directly answers the question. This also connects to a healthy approach to guessing, where you eliminate the options that clearly do not match the verb or the goal, and then you choose between the remaining options by asking which one is more direct and more justified by the scenario. This is not luck, it is structured reasoning. When you study, you can practice explaining why 3 options are wrong, because being able to articulate wrongness is a sign that you understand the category boundaries. Those boundaries are what protect you from distractors. Finally, a strong spoken plan and a strong set of exam day mental models come together when you rehearse them, not just understand them. Rehearsal does not mean pretending you are already a professional. It means practicing the thinking habits that the exam will require. You rehearse your plan by saying it out loud, keeping it simple, and following it even when the session is small. You rehearse your mental models by using them during practice questions. Identify the verb, choose the bucket, climb the ladder from definition to decision, and protect your time budget. Over time, these stop feeling like separate techniques and start feeling like your default way of approaching security problems. That is the real goal, because on exam day you do not want to invent a new strategy. You want to run the strategy you already trained. When you do that, the exam becomes less about nerves and more about execution, and execution is something you can control. Keep the plan spoken, keep the models simple, and keep showing up, because steady practice turns uncertainty into familiarity, and familiarity turns into points.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.